Welcome to the Unshakable Growth. I'm Esty, and let's get started. Welcome to the Unshakable Growth podcast, where we explore the journey of individuals who embraces personal growth and dive into different guest speakers' real-life experience and inspiring story. Today, I'm so excited to have Richard with me, who I knew from a public speaking bootcamp back in June. Join me and get ready for another episode full of insights. It is my absolute pleasure to have you here into my podcast, Richard.
Thanks for having me, Esty. It's a great opportunity to talk, and congratulations on the success of your podcast. It's going really well.
Thank you. And I'm really glad that you guys are such a supportive bunch to come into my podcast as a guest speaker.
It's also a good avenue. Everyone has a very specific message to tell and a very powerful message. So it's a great platform that we have the opportunity to share what we're passionate about and what's important to us. So it's a good opportunity, as I said. So thanks.
Yeah, amazing. First off, can I get you to introduce yourself for a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So my name's Richard Crowell. And currently I wear the hat as Mr. Crowell, the woodwork teacher. Now I've been working in the education field for about the last 20 years. But prior to that, I've worked in the carpentry industry, have a carpentry trade. I've got an undergraduate degree in anthropology. And my formative vocation was in hospitality, and that's all underpinned by a passion for travelling. So amongst all of that, it's given me the opportunity to now add keynote speaker onto my resume and talk about some of the experiences and things learned in such a diverse past. So it's interesting. When I reflect on that, if I was to look at a 17-year-old me planning my future, none of those experiences would have been on there. So it's fascinating how we might have a plan in which we want to aspire to, but life can just take you on a far different course. And so that's a good thing to get that message out to especially adolescents trying to plan a career path. It's not so easy, but whatever you choose, it really does not matter. You can't go wrong.
I'm just really curious, what makes you decide to be a keynote speaker? Because being a woodwork teacher and suddenly transition into a keynote speaker, what's that defining moment to make you decide to do that?
Look, it's possibly the same motivation that took me into teaching in the first place. I started teaching at the age of 35, and I was a mature age by then. Up until then, I'd had some unique experiences, and primarily it involved cycling 40,000 kilometres around the world, broken up into a number of larger but smaller trips. And when having completed that, there was so much that was learnt from it. I thought it was a good opportunity to then move into teaching to sort of help guide and mentor, particularly young men, but adolescents into how you can make decisions for your future. And even though a lot of these journeys were 20 years ago, I now see the importance that it's not necessarily about my specific journeys, but it's about what I've learnt from them. And that's the message I want to get across to adolescents and people caught up in making significant decisions that often, there's a pathway we can follow that just takes some of the difficulties out of things, or at least reassures us and gives us some self-belief when we're moving forward. So the keynote speaking sort of evolved from that. I've got some unique experiences from pedaling around the globe, and then life experience from 20 years in front of kids. That's never easy.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are always constantly making decisions. Some are big, some are small. As someone like you with more life experience, do you have any specific advice, especially for young people, to make really big life decision? Perhaps like choosing a career path, or what's the next big step for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when we talk about the decision-making process, there's sort of two parameters you're working within. One's the rational. We're making this decision, and we're going to make it on a rational basis, and that's governed often by statistics or guidance from others and data, etc. The second area of decision-making process we compete with is more the intuitive. Now, Simon Sinek talks about this, that it all comes from within the brain, two different parts. The intuitive we might refer to if it comes from the heart or if you've got a gut feeling. And that sort of can boil down to the why you're doing something. And if you have a genuine reason as to why you're doing something, you do want to follow that path, even if it may be slightly unorthodox. Mm-hmm. Because if you've got that why and you understand why things are happening or why you're doing it, there's two benefits. When things go well, you can keep pursuing it and pushing it along. But when things don't go well, it gives you the opportunity to reflect upon when you made that decision. And if it still resonates with you, why you made the decision in the first place, it gives you the fight to keep moving on. And so that way, when decisions don't work out properly, you can at least not just blame yourself and be hard on yourself, but dig a bit deeper to go on. So I'll tell you a situation where this happened to me once. When I was traveling around Australia, mm-hmm. I was working as I went to pick up jobs to pick up some cash. I was working in Rottnest Island off the west coast of Western Australia. So I was living in paradise. I had my own cycling track, my own personal cycling track around Rottnest Island. And I was working as a waiter there. And as you do when you're living in paradise, something compels you to leave it. So I was offered a job at 300k south down in Margaret River. Mm-hmm. Thought, okay, well, it's a chance to experience Margaret River. So packed my bike, cycled down to Margaret River, and I was under the expectation that accommodation had been provided. And often these hospitality jobs do. And I've got there and they said, there's no accommodation, it's just the job. So I wheeled my bike around to the campground. It was $50 a week to put my tent up in a campground. Now, that was a lot of money to me back then. And I was surrounded by forest, and I'd just been living in the middle of nowhere, pedaling across the country anyhow. So on my day off, I went cycling through the forest outside of Margaret River, and I found just a clearing 2k's out of town, halfway up a mountainside, tucked away nowhere. And I set up camp there. Mm-hmm. And one day became 2 days, became a week. I lived in this forest for 4 months, Esty. I lived in there 4 months, carrying my water in. I would cycle to work. I would do my job as a waiter or barman. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. And then at night, at midnight, I'd pedal on home back to the bush. Now, for the first 6 months, I honestly was petrified because I just thought someone would be sitting there waiting, because we have this preconditioned fear of the dark and of the unknown, and as a city suburban boy, that was in my head. And at night you're hearing strange sounds. There's always these feet coming to get you, and you realise it's just you're in someone else's environment. It was just a wallaby tracking down to the watercourse. And once I realised that, it became a wonderful experience. Now this all stemmed from them not having accommodation for me, it was my misunderstanding, and it was a really difficult situation. And I was kicking myself. Why did I leave Rottnest Island? Why did I leave such a great job, and this isn't working out? Yeah. But then you go back to the reason why you do it. And I wanted to experience Margaret River. I wanted a different sort of area to live in. And so if you go back to why you're doing it, then when you're in a pickle, you find a way forward, and often from adversity, really good opportunities come, because you wouldn't normally think that way. Why would you live in a forest for 4 months, Esty? There's no sense to it. There's no logic.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I guess because when you are in that position of feeling that you had made a bad decision, you always go back to think why. Why did you make that decision in the first place?
You do, and when you do that, you tend to be hard on yourself and doubt yourself. But what we often overlook, Esty, is that when we make these decisions in the first place, there's specific parameters and context and reasons why.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, when you're in a different situation, the reasons for making that decision hasn't changed, but we forget that, and now we're down on ourselves because it just didn't work out as we had intended. Whereas ultimately, it's just a crossroads, and then you deviate, you find an alternate route, a path forward, or just go a different direction.
Yeah. sometimes things just don't work out as what you imagine.
More than often, and we know that life is unscripted, Esty. Nothing goes to plan. And if you had a room full of people and you asked them, say, out of all you here, who of you is working in the job that when you were 17 sitting at school said you would want to be? Anecdotally, I'd suggest more than half, if not 80%, would say they're in a different vocation. If someone had said to me when I was 17 that you would be Mr. Crowder, woodwork teacher, I would have laughed them and myself out of the room. That would never happen. And yet here I am 30 years, 40, 50 years later doing that. So
Wow, that's a really inspiring story that you had there. I really like the one where you had to camp in the bush for like what, 4 months? Yeah, that's
yeah, purely by choice, but it was a great opportunity, and what we do in life is we never envisage some of the outcomes, but you build capacity in what you do. So I never went in there. If someone said, Rich, you've got to go live in the forest for 4 months, I go, oh, I can't do that. That's impossible. Yeah. But if you go, well, just live there for a week, mate, it's going to save you $50. And then 1 week becomes 2, becomes 3. And then you've established yourself. And without having that intention, you've been able to grow in what you're doing. Now this is, it's almost the origin of how my whole cycling career began. Now, my cycling career began cycling from Cairns to Sydney. So it's 3,000 kilometres. And I'd never done any cycling before. Mm-hmm. Now, to undertake such a journey, you would think you need to do some quite significant planning in order to be successful. So this is how it happened. I'd been living in England a few years. I went over to England for a year. 934 days later, I returned from Europe, and I thought, I'll go to Cairns. The motivation was I wanted to go back home for Christmas, see the family. I'm a suburban boy, one of 6 kids. It had been nearly 3 years, but I didn't want to just fly to Sydney. I thought, well, you've had a lot of little journeys around Europe. What's next? I thought, well, why not buy a bike and cycle home? Well, how do you do that? Well, and this is the thought process. Okay, get them out. It's 3,000 kilometres from Cairns to Sydney, and if you've got 3 months, you've got 90 days. Okay, Rich, if you cycle 100 k's a day for 30 days, you can do it. But I said, I can't cycle 100 k's a day for 30 days. Oh, okay. If you did 50 k's a day for 60 days, you do your 3,000 k's. I thought, I could do that, because remember, I've got 90 days. I've got 90 days to do this. So I thought, this is possible. I bought a ticket from London. I flew into Cairns. I arrived on a Sunday evening, about 5, 6 p.m. And I went down to the waterfront. I had a 6-pack of beer and a barbecued chook, and it had been nearly 3 years since I'd been in Australia. And a couple of local boys befriended me and my 6-pack of beer and my barbecued chook. And that night I was walking back to Australia with these local fellas, and we slept under a tree at the back of the car park near the shopping centre that evening. On the Monday, I asked the boys, where's the bike shop? They sent me to a bike shop, and I bought a bicycle. I asked the bike shop, where's the camp store? So they sent me to the camp store, and I bought some camp gear. And I asked the camp gear, where's the post office? And they sent me to the post office, and I sent my backpack down to the Sydney GPO that you could pick up months later. Monday night, I cycled out of Cairns to start my adventure. So that was the extent of my planning and training, going, well, I can do it. I need a bike, and I need something to eat, and I need some camp gear. And away I went. So Monday night, I'm sitting under a piece of plastic, which was my tent. It was bucketing down rain, but still about 90% humidity and 28 degrees, which I couldn't understand. But that was when we were in geography classes in Year 9, and they spoke about tropical climates. This is what they meant. I should have listened. So everything was different. You're in a tropical climate. You're back in Australia. You're undertaking this quest that you have no idea about. So on the Tuesday, the next day, you get up, you go again, and you just keep going in a straight line. And whilst there's challenges along the way, you just deal with them, because you have to be a little bit naive in what you're doing. Otherwise, you'd find too many objections. And so, like, there's these motorists in far north Queensland that saw this. Okay, there's this me barreling down the Bruce Highway, which is just a two-way road, rough shoulder, so it's rough on the edges and then gravel and then just expanse for all the way to see Rockhampton to Mackay. 430 k's, nothing there. So I'm barreling down the Bruce Highway into a headwind, and there's these road trains jamming past you. These road trains are massive. They're two carriages long, and they want to suck you under the wheels of the truck. So it's quite terrifying as you're doing that. And as you're doing that, you're seeing roadkill littered like chip packets at the footy down the shoulder of the road. So you're dodging the roadkill. You've got the road trains coming past you, and I'm doing this through magpie season. So now I've got magpies coming down, having at me. I'm swinging this ocky strap, dodging the road trains, trying to avoid the roadkill to make my way to Sydney. And I never planned for it. I didn't know that was coming. But you just got to adapt, and you've got to live to tell the tale. And it worked, Esty. It worked. I made it there. So pretty stoked about that. So I made it to Sydney in just enough time. So I got home for Christmas, and that was the beautiful part of the story. So it all came to fruition, but that was never, well, that was my intention, but I hadn't even got to Townsville, and I thought, I'd really like to cycle around the world. This thing's good. And so it's funny, just from that seed, things grew from there. So it was excellent.
Well, I really love your story. It's so good, so easy to listen, and it's so good. And this brings me to my second part of the question, which challenges are actually in part of our life where we decide on no matter what it is, right? For your scenario, it's a little bit different because not many people will do such a thing to cycle for 3,000 kilometers. But for normal people, they would be maybe facing challenges in their studies, in career paths, or
Yes.
any
Yeah.
setback that they have. Yeah. So just wondering, how do you like work through these challenges, and what advice would you share with someone that's navigating through tough situation?
So that's a good question, because when we're faced with challenges, they can come from two places. There can be a challenge that we're faced because of a decision we've made, and that's what we're alluding to before. Things aren't working out as we'd hoped, so we need to resolve that. Or there's challenges where we've actually been bumped off course, and through no fault of your own, you find yourself in circumstances that you couldn't imagine. Now when you're dealing with challenges and there's sort of things that are perhaps within your control, emotionally, it's like you're playing on a football field that's all manicured, and you've got your sidelines, and emotionally you're moving just up and down that. You have wins, you have losses, good days, bad days, but you try and work with best you can, especially if you had a happy, healthy, stable, growing environment.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're bumped off course through other circumstances, those parameters are not there, and rather than feeling like you're on a field just running up and down that's comfortably manicured, it's like you're wandering in a paddock miles from home, and you have no point of reference. It is self-belief that will only get you through a lot of this, and it's being courageous in your decision making. Now, there was this one time, I've made reference a couple of times to just being a suburban kid, and I grew up in Sydney with being one of 6 kids. Loved my rugby, played that for many years, was into my painting, creative, loved Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. My room was covered in these posters. I identified through my clothes, what I wore, and it was interesting listening to Mark Tully, when you're interviewing him. He talked about material possessions and how they can bring happiness, and in a way we or I was identifying myself through how I dressed and what I wear and what I did. Now there was this one evening where I'd been away at a party, and I came home the next day on the Sunday, and as I've gone down the side of the house is single level at the front, but 2 stories underneath, and Dad's come out the side, and he's put his arm around me and said, have you heard what's happened? And you know that feeling you get when you look in someone's eyes and you know something's wrong, but you just don't know what, and sort of nothing more really needs to be said. He took me down the side of the stairs and around the back of the house, and I'm seeing all these things that I couldn't quite process. It was a sensory overload as I'm seeing charred carcasses of beds and cabinets out on the back fence or out in the backyard, twisted, nailed, melted aluminium frames, broken glass. And I've passed my brother's room and seen that. I've passed and stopped out the front of my room and just seen this char of the walls, and there was nothing left in it. And the fire the night before had ripped through the bottom part of the house. And on that day, the only possessions in my life was what I was wearing. Just thankfully my Sid Barrett t-shirt. I'd painted that, shine on you crazy diamond, my jeans, and my KT26 sneakers, and that was it. And it raised a lot of questions as to who I was. And even though I still could be all those things, it's like, well, you said you played footy, show us, prove it. Well, all my trophies, pennants, everything's gone. You said you wrote all artistic, show us. That's all gone. Your posters, you're like, and so that for me was a catalyst to make change and to live some form of experience as opposed to material. I had this realization that the material isn't permanent. It doesn't last forever, whereas the experience can't be taken away from you. And that was the reason I made that difficult decision to drop out of university at the age of 21. Like that, when we talk about decision making, that was not a rational decision. You're leaving your education and look, first year of uni was the best 3 years of my life, Esty, but I had to make some changes. And so that's where I flew to England. So I've lost all my possessions. And so what I thought was the best thing to do was to then leave all my family and friends and support network as well. Now, again, there's absolutely nothing rational about that. And when I've landed in England and people said, oh, people are friendlier in the north of England, I've hitchhiked north to Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And I was sad. I was lonely. It was a really difficult time. But then again, you go back to, well, why did you leave? Well, I wanted to leave to have experience, and I wanted to leave to forge a new life. And, well, aren't you doing this? Well, yeah, but it's not fun. Well, that doesn't matter. You made the decision to do this, so make the best of it. Yeah. And very quickly, I was able to then think, well, what do I need to do first? I need to get some employment first. So then I got a job, and from that, then I made some sort of social connections, and then everything took off from there. One thing leads to another. One door led to another corridor that led to another door, and none of this was mapped out. Sometimes we try and prescribe things too often and script things, and if like my career path, if I'd planned and mapped that out, I would have been a failure before I hit the first benchmark, which was to get my uni degree. Yeah. Now, I got it much later, but at the time when someone says, well, you failed there, they don't think, well, what about the long game? Play the long game. And this is the reassurance to give to youth. Play the long game. Doesn't matter what you choose to do, because research tells us you'll have 4 or 5 careers in your lifetime anyhow. Just do something, and then doors open. Like, Esty, when you were 17, you weren't saying, I'm going to have a podcast and be, hitting the socials world. Yeah, but it happens. We reach crossroads.
Yeah, when I was 17, what am I doing? Oh, I was actually trying to pursue my studies into culinary, and I was like studying culinary and pastries. So now,
right, okay.
Yeah, now what I'm doing now is totally different from what I've done in my 70s. Yeah.
Now, if I can ask you a question though, that time you're doing pastries and culinary stuff, can I ask, do you still today make beautiful pastries and show that off to your friends, or make it to please yourself? But you still put pastries in your life?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I find it enjoying. Yeah, and yeah, I really like the feeling of how after people eating those pastries and they were like, oh, this is so good. Yeah.
And this is the message that we sort of want to endorse for adolescents as well, is that whatever experience you encounter, you'll travel with those skills. Yeah. So, for example, I spent 12 months working as an electrical trades assistant. So in between some of my journeys, I'd seek different sorts of employment. Now, remember, I said I was a carpenter. I spent 12 months working as an electrical trades assistant, and it was going really well. And the boss said to me, he said, Rich, look, it's going really well. Why don't you go to TAFE and formalise this? And I didn't even think of the response, but I looked at him and I just said, because I want to become a carpenter. And it was the oddest thing to say to a boss who's a Sparky. And I felt a bit bad about that. But again, to this day, I will still do my own electrical work. I'll get it checked and signed off, but I'll run it all in and rough it in. I can do things because that's a skill for life. How's this? Like I said, I worked in hospitality. I love nothing better more than we've got people here, Esty, all for dinner, and I'll clear a table of 10 in one hand. I'd stack them up, the side plates, the forks, and not one hand. Beautiful. Skills for life. Not important, but they just add more to your toolbox of what you can offer. So it doesn't matter what you do, and sometimes we're quick to say, oh, I failed there. Well, no, because I tried it, and that's not for me. I'm now moving on. There's a beautiful Samuel Beckett quote, and he's big on failure, and it's ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. And that's all you got to do. Just get up, try again, fail better. I spent my life failing better, and it's been a charm. I say yes, it's been awesome.
Wow, I really love that advice so much. Yeah, because I think when I was so much younger, I was thinking like, oh, I have to be a chef for my lifetime. And what I study in university will follow me for a lifetime and I can't change my career. But apparently now what I'm doing is so different from what I've been doing in my late um, teens and in the early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also in the
See,
hospitality industry anyway. It's a different part of it now. So previously I was in F&B in the kitchen side of it, but now I'm in
yeah,
sales and marketing, so it's so different.
yeah. So what also is interesting is sometimes when we transition from one role to another, or we get a crossroads in life where we feel we have an opportunity to make change, and it's a bold decision. Like in your instance, something motivated you to follow your sales and marketing. Interestingly, listening to Calms in your first podcast, how she'd achieved everything she wanted as a CPA, but that wasn't fulfilling, and so she's made the brave and bold decision to embark on something else in a neuro-linguistic programming world. It's awesome, and these are the stories we need to hear and share with people. Is what change you've made, and what forced that change or initiated, and what skills you put in place when you're making that change, and that comes back to the why, which is seems to be very, very important as to why we do things.
Yeah. I guess it's always the skill stacking part is really important because yeah, it's just like adding value into the toolbox that you have, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it goes for physical skills, but also emotional skills as well. And earlier on, when you're talking about challenges, it's hard when you haven't experienced something before, and the emotional impact that has. And despite its difficulties, through having experienced, we will face similar challenges again, or go down paths where we'll be exposed to that same impact or level of emotion. And having experienced or tasted it once and then twice and then the third time, I think that's the underpinning of resilience. You're going, well, I don't have an answer to it, but I know I can get out of this. I know that I can find a path forward. And for me, there was this situation where I'd once had an injury at work, and a small injury, but it was enough to keep me off for a couple of months. And the house is so cold, Essie. The house is cold. It was winter, and I thought, I can't just sit here, and I wasn't allowed to drive. I can't just sit here all day freezing and running the heater or under blankets. I thought, I've got to get out and walk. I've got to do something to keep warm. And also, we need a narrative. You need to have a purpose. So I'd lost my fulfillment of working in my job, and I didn't want to be a burden on the family, because that means I've got to be driven everywhere to my medical appointments, and then Kat's got to do the shopping and this. And so I thought, no, that's my narrative. And so every day I'd get up, I'd walk to the shops, carry what I could, bring home, and I would organise and prepare dinner with my one hand and do that. And so from this negative experience, over 3 months, I had this most wonderful opportunity to get healthy, to clear my headspace. I was walking every day, and it was great. And 5 years later, dare I say it, a similar things happened again. Yeah, similar thing happened again, Esty, and it was not good. But rather than it being problematic, straight away I've gone, well, hold on, you've done this before. It's not a good thing, but you know what to expect. So I almost automatically reverted into, well, I'm now walking again. So you're walking 4 kilometres to the medical appointment and 4 kilometres back, and 6 kilometres to the GP and back, because that's your narrative. You've got to maintain some form of value or worth or independence or sense of what you're doing. And so, when things are difficult, we build capacity just by getting through things. And what happens is when you get, as you put it nicely, like have a life of experience. When you get old, when you get old, you've seen things and how things play out a few times. Mm-hmm. It creates what I call a. Have you ever looked back upon something yesterday and go, oh, it actually wasn't all that bad now, and look back upon it retrospectively?
Yeah, I thought so, because sometimes in the moment itself you feel like, oh, this is so bad, it's the worst thing that happened to me. But after a few months later, when you look back, it's actually something that grows you to become stronger and to be who you are today. Yeah.
So we have this retrospect, and we're really good at retrospect. We can tap in and go, well, actually that wasn't, and it's almost as if it's a sign of stoicism. Well, actually that wasn't too bad after all.
Yeah.
So what if at the time you're in that situation, you had a foresight to your retrospect. So there's this thing, foresight to retrospect. Yeah. So even though it's not going really well, because you've lived it before, you go, well, hold on, in a few months, I'll be looking back upon this going, it's okay. And that's just one little tool that I use to reframe my circumstances. If I can't change a particular outcome, it's all right, Rich. In a few months, you won't even be worried about this. And I go, well, if that's the case, well, I'll try not to worry about it as much now. And so that just takes some of the edge and acuteness off things, because it'll be all right. And especially if you're like me and you can get quite quite emotional about things or passionate about things. Sometimes, don't worry, it's all right. You'll be fine. And so this foresight to retrospect is one of those great little tools where just think ahead to when you're going to think back. That's all you got to do, and you'll be fine.
Wow, amazing. I think we need to always keep this in mind, that nothing's wasted. Like the experience that you've gone through, they will actually eventually build up to your skill set.
Yes, yeah. Like if I think about losing all my possessions in the fire, in some sense that would be the most terrible negative experience, but it's the most beautiful experience of my life, because it didn't make me cycle around the world, but it got me to leave where I was at to start something and find something new. Now, as you say, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but everyone finds their niche or passion, and so that's where it led me to travel, and then travel led to different adventures, and then it sort of metamorphed into this cycling thing. Because when I'd mentioned the idea was, with only having done less than 400 Ks, I wish to cycle around the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, how do you do that? And well, as you know, I've made my way around Australia. Then when I got to Darwin, I went to Kakadu, worked as a cook for 7 months there. So again, cashed up. Then I flew to Timor. In Timor, I then island hopped my way through Flores, Sumbawa, Lombok, Bali, Java, Sumatra, so cycled up through Indonesia. Now I was quite well travelled by then, because I'd spent, like I say, nearly 3 years in Europe and all around Australia. Got to Flores, and I had never experienced culture shock like that before. Because I was in a little hut with a dirt floor, and I couldn't speak the language and couldn't read the language. All I could hear were roosters crowing. It was 5 a.m. I didn't have money and I was starving and I could not get myself out of bed. It was genuine culture shock. And by about 11, I kid you not, by 11 o'clock, it's like peeled myself out of it. You got to reach, you got to eat, you got to do something. And it's funny. It's these things that just compel you into action, and you're forced to act, and you find your way forward, and then things just took off from there. From Malaysia Indonesia went down through Peninsula Malaysia, where I met a guy I cycled with for a week who'd cycled from London to Sydney. This guy Phil. So when I got to Malaysia up through Thailand, my sister was getting married, and it was time to return home. So I returned home. I was 26 years old, and my sister got married. And I thought, well, what do I do now? And one of the things I like to tell people is, one, it's your self-belief, and by now having achieved these things, my self-belief was growing. But two, it's keep the wheels in motion. You've got to keep the wheels in motion. So when I returned to Australia, I thought, well, I'm at this crossroads. So I returned to my university studies, and the degree that I'd left 5 years ago, I returned to and then changed some of it, and then not long later came out with my anthropology degree. So one thing that at the age of 21 was marked as a fail was actually, it's not a fail, it's just you haven't got there yet. And when the timing was right, I went there and got my anthropology degree. Now the day after I got that, the next day, I had a ponytail at this point. I shaved my head back to zero, and with my brother Dan, and he was a bloke that we were downstairs that had the space. He lost everything as well. With my brother Dan, we flew to Hong Kong. And by now I had a video camera and a bit more gear, a bit more stuff than I bought that day in Cairns. And we then cycled through, got to mainland China, cycled through mainland China, central west China up to Chongqing, and then from Chongqing we flew to Lhasa. And then from Lhasa, and Lhasa's at 3,200 metres, we were cycling the Friendship Highway via Everest Base Camp down into Kathmandu. So now we'd gone from this bloke who just flew into Cairns with a barbecue chook and a six-pack of beer, was now trying to cross the Himalayas on a bike. And it's just this sense of belief that not the dream, just you build capacity, you have a go. Now, it was one of the more challenging things I've done in life. You've got altitude that kicks in at over 3,000 metres. We had a range of passes between 3,600 and 5,200 metres. So by now, up at 5,000 metres, the air's thin, you've got to try and descend them. We got through things. Things were going really well. We descended our final pass, Pang La, at 5,200, and now we can just see Everest. Everest is there. We just got to cross the valley floor and find our way up to Everest Base Camp.
Wow.
On this one track, heading across, I just felt something with the bike go wrong, and where my pedals attached to the center bottom bracket to my down tubes, the whole thing had just broken away and shattered. So I'm 2 days from where my goal is, and I'm in the middle of nowhere because there's not much going on around where we are, and my bike frame is now completely busted up, and I've got to get out of there. So in an instant, this dream to cycle to base camp has just been gone. And then my bro, and there was an American girl, Kath, that was cycling with us as well, and she was an incredible individual. They were going to push on, and I had to get my way out of there. And the power and impact of how I took that not reaching base camp, I took it as a complete failure, Esty, and it sat uncomfortably with me for a long time, and it was something that I carried around, but others wouldn't get it. They go, but hold on, you tell me you cycled all this way, you did this, you crossed these paths, you made that, you endured these, and you're saying you're a failure because you were 80 kilometres short of there. And so I learned that it's perhaps our expectations are greater than others, and not to be hard on yourself in that instance. These are circumstances beyond your control, and you need to make the best out of it. Now there's two things that come out of this, Esty. It was quite interesting. That bike broke for a reason, and I know the circumstances under which it happened. Now, a couple of years prior, when I was saying I was cycling up through Thailand, and then I had to come home because my sister got married. Yeah. I had a friend I was meeting. She was 300 kilometres south of Bangkok, and I still, with 2 days out, I had 300 kilometres to go. So I said, I can do that. I just need 150 Ks a day and I'll meet her in time. And on the first day, I thought, no worries, I did that. Then on the second day, going to meet her, it got to the evening and I'm still a long way to go. And so I found my way out to the main road. There's a highway, north-south highway, south of Bangkok, all the traffic heads up on that. Next to that, Esty, they were building this more lanes and it was just a graded road, just dirt road being graded with a tractor. And that was it. So I'm cycling on that. It's now dark. It's dark. I don't have a helmet. I don't have bike lights. So you know where this is headed. All right. So I don't have a helmet. Don't have bike light. It's dark. I'm pedaling along and I've got to make this certain distance to make it sure I can get there. And as I'm pedaling along, we used to have this cartoon we'd watch as a kid and it was called Coyote and the Roadrunner. I don't know if you're aware of that. And Coyote and the Roadrunner is one of the Warner Brothers cartoons. The coyote is spending his life trying to catch the roadrunner. And he'll chase the roadrunner off a cliff. Now the roadrunner will keep running to the other side. The coyote gets to the edge of the cliff. He runs off. Off the cliff, his feet are still spinning, and then he holds up a sign saying, "Oh, damn," and he plummets. So I'm pedaling along, and something's not right. And my wheels are spinning, and it's pitch black. And then I get this feeling of, oh dear. And I could feel myself free falling. Now, this is all happening in a split second. This is a split second stuff. And you know how they say, like, you have a situation and your life flashes before your eyes? Mm-hmm. It does. It does. So the circumstances I'm in, I'm pedaling, but now it's pitch black and I'm free falling, but I can't see where I'm free falling. So in my mind, I'm free falling. It could be a 100-meter ravine to my death. And in that instant, I'm going, I felt this warmth for my parents and this sadness because, you know, I lived a beautiful life and they'd given me great opportunity and the sadness it would cause them. And that made me feel really sad. And then I felt warmth of the life I lived in and my childhood. And all this happened in an instant. And then my bike hit the ground, the front wheel snapped. I got spewing off the bike. I'm assuming I got knocked unconscious. I came to a bit later and realised what the circumstances was. They were building a bridge, but they hadn't built the bridge part yet. And there was I just careered straight off the bridge. If I was a bit that way, I would have hit a pylon. If I was a bit that way, I would have landed on reinforced steel coming up and be dead. As it turned out, I just managed to survive. It was only about 6 meters, so it wasn't as dramatic as all of that. But what happened in my head was dramatic, and they were real. But this is what I think fractured the frame. That years later, because I'm still on the same bike, broke when I'm cycling to Everest Base Camp. So this has all sort of haunted me years later, and feeling the devastation or the sadness of not reaching base camp, like I said, I carried with me, but then that led to greater opportunity because, you know, my mate Phil that I mentioned I cycled with for a week, well, back to these hard decisions. I'm living in Sydney. I've got my way back from China to Tibet. I'm working as a cook now in Balmain and doing some electrical work. I'm going out with a beautiful woman. I'm 30 years old. And Phil, this guy says, we need one more bloke to join us from a cycle trip from London to Cape Town. Mm-hmm. And I've gone, no, not me. And then one night I'm watching the young fella that sold solo around Australia. Jesse Martin, I think his name might be, not around Australia, around the world. I was watching his video, Lionheart, and I thought, the fire stirred within me. And I said to Kath, I think I'm going to do it. And normally that's what I say, I'm going to do this, and someone will say, oh, you can't. And you go, well, I am. Oh, she goes, okay, no worries. See you later. Aren't you going to say no? And anyhow, so I then undertook this journey from London to Cape Town, and it was organised by Phil. Phil had cycled the length of South America at the age of 18. He'd cycled from London to Sydney, and he was coming via the Russian states when his mum fell ill. So went back, nursed her. I met him on the trip London to Sydney again, but this time he went via down India and that way. So he had his partner Laurence. She was a photographer by trade. There was another girl, Beck, who was a journalist, and I went as a cameraman, having filmed China, Tibet. And we set out in April 2001, and our goal was to cycle through England, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, Macedonia, Greece, Turkey, and then from Turkey go through the Middle East, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, and then hit the African continent, go down East Africa, Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, and South Africa. And so we did that. We mounted our bikes and away we went, Esty. And that was the you know how I've been wanting to cycle around the world. It's taken me years, and I only got as far as, not only as far, I'd made as far as Nepal, so I'd had a good crack at getting across. And here was one opportunity. I never thought of going down the world. It's all downhill, heaps easier, in doing it that way. And so here was a chance with a bloke I knew for a week, with two others that I didn't know, to sign up my life to go for a year and have a crack. And it was awesome. It was truly awesome experience. We were it was quite incredible to do that.
Such inspiring to hear all your cycling stories and the experience that you have gone through. Wow. You're bringing me on a roller coaster ride right now.
Well, yeah, well, and that's what life is like, though. And it's funny because you can condense it, when you condense it into 30 minutes, you know, well, what's our story? And we all have a story. Like this London to Cape Town trip was an enormous part of my life, and so much happened, but I can condense that into a sentence. We did the London to Cape Town trip. But what I learned and what I took from it, like we talked about with your patisserie and my electrical and things, skills and life lessons that, again, you just put them in your pocket, and every now and then you'll call on them because you've experienced something similar, or you've witnessed something. And so it promotes tolerance and well-being and openness and a sense of adventure. And there's one fellow who I reckon you'll have him on your podcast soon, Mr. Tim Buxton, from You Belong, would be an incredible individual to tell you about stories of endurance and hardship and how that you can have positive. You can have positive endings. You want some positive endings.
I think his story is also one of amazing ones. Different ones from normal people.
Well, again, you have opportunity to make decisions, and you choose. And every time you make the best decision for yourself at the time. And I think the whole thing boils down to that. We don't make a decision for ourselves going, oh, this is not going to work. You go, well, I'm going to make this because I want it to work. And so with his working overseas in hostile environments, he's obviously, there's the why there, the passion. And then if you've got that, you know, there was an interesting graphic I saw once, and listening to Mario books on his running and his experiences, he talked about motivation and determination. Now, his motivation here was quite interesting because he said the motivation, you save that for race day. That's big. And your determination is all your little stuff. And the way I imagine it, like if you get a basketball and you bounce it as hard as you can, the first bounce is super high. And then the next one's less and less and less. And that's your motivation. That's that. Whereas your discipline, what he was referring to as determination, I frame for myself as discipline, where that's a little karaoke ball dancing across the lyrics of a song that just never ends, and that just doesn't stop. It's just little step, bang, 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 and you never want it to end. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you do want karaoke to end, but away, just little bang, 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 and you know, if I think of the cycling, that's all that was, just getting up every day, doing the little things. There's people that cycle and have cycled far more than me, and they do it just by cycling around Sydney on a weekend in their Lycra. So, you know, it's just go in a straight line, and the decisions you make the brave decisions, Esty. The brave decisions, courageous ones, because especially when you talk with adolescents, you've only got one youth. You've only got, you know, exploit your youth. You get older and things, your joints seize up. If someone asked me, could I do what I've done again, I have to say no. And it's not because of the fitness, because as I was saying, I never trained or got fit for anything. That London to Cape Town ride, I left there. I pedalled me fat sorry butt out of Trafalgar Square, weighing it at 95 kilos. I had not cycled once for 18 months prior to that trip. My training for that trip was practicing drinking coffee without sugar in case we weren't going to have all our resources. That was my training, because I thought, well, why turn a 12,000 kilometre trip into 15,000 kilometres by adding 3,000 kilometres of circles around Sydney town? Like, I figured I would get fit by Lebanon. That was my goal. Just get fit by Lebanon and Africa would be a breeze. And that's sort of how it worked, you know. You get fit along the way and have a crack. So, you know, that's where you can make your ill-informed, courageous decisions. And that way, Samuel Johnson, he was an English literist. He said, if all possible objections must first be overcome, nothing would ever be attempted. And it's true. You know, this London to Cape Town trip, how are you getting into Sudan? Oh, we don't know. How are you going to cross Sudan? I don't know. What about Somali bandits in Kenya? I don't know. What are you going to do for Ethiopia using the referendum? I don't know. All you could say is, I don't know. And whilst the questions were coming from a really good place, and often these questions, or often information you get, is coming from a place of love. You know, a parent's guiding their child in what to do. What are you going to do? And, you know, parents forget themselves that they used to be youthful and vigorous and full of dreams. And parents forget themselves that they've probably had career changes as well, yet worry because their child doesn't know what to do, even though they themselves might not know what to do. But if you're worried, kids pick up on that. They're super incredible animals, adolescents, and they pick up on everything. So So if we don't project our worry, if we don't worry, imagine if you told a kid, doesn't matter, you can't go wrong. Oh, I don't know what to do. Doesn't matter, you can't go wrong. Become a pastry chef, because that way you can be guaranteed to run the food and beverage, financial, sales and marketing team. Like, who knows?
Yeah, that's right. I think as a children, they don't think much, and hence less worry and not thinking about the consequences and all.
No, they don't. But you know, sometimes they shouldn't. Should they have to worry about the consequences of stuff? You know, if you choose this, you might end up. Well, you know, and depending what it is. We're not endorsing going out there and stealing cars or doing the negative things. But in a decision-making process, it's like, especially, see, when you're young, you got time to fix things. You got time to turn things around. So even though I might have spent 10 years in hospitality, over a 10-year period in hospitality, you know, I then spent 10 years all in carpentry and then another 20 in workshops or something else. And if I was to ask someone, how long does it take to get good at playing, say, an instrument? And they might say 5 years. You go, oh, yeah, okay, I'd love to play the guitar. Well, if I'm 55, by the time I'm 60, I'd be pretty good at playing the guitar. If you had a crack, it's never too late. But when you're younger, you can bounce back from anything. You can do multiple things to a highly skilled and developed level. You know, do I go to uni? Well, you'll become a tradesman. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You know, you will end up where you need to be at the time you need to be there. Timing's a huge factor. And, you know, a male's brain's not even close to developed at 26, let alone 16. Yeah, even 34. I'd say 55 is still developing or deteriorating. There's a fine line, Esty, between your brain's developing and deteriorating. There'd be this window of opportunity where you're just lucid and that's it. I don't know when that comes. Maybe I've missed it. Don't sleep through that bit.
Yeah. Well, you're still looking strong and developing.
Yes, flattery gets you everywhere. Yes.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Our podcast session was supposed to be meant for 30 minutes and we are over now.
You're going to lose listeners, Esther. You're going to have to edit this tight. You're going to lose listeners.
But it was such interesting story that you shared, because it's not in every person's everyday life. Those cycling journey to all these different places and such a long journey, it's truly inspiring, and it's not everyone will have that in their life.
Yeah, look, thank you for recognising that, and I'm only starting to recognise that now. It was normal to me, and recognising that, I still think from those experiences, there's metaphors in how we can apply that to our daily lives and help us chart a path forward, because as we know, we make decisions, things change.
Yeah. Amazing. So Richard isn't just like shaping the young people's mind, but I think he himself is a mentor of navigating life choices, experiencing different things happening in life and pivoting around along with all the challenges that he faced. Really, thank you once again for coming into my podcast, The Unshakable Growth. You have given us such a lot of opportunity to think about what it comes when making decisions and finding resilience in tough situations. So remember, life is full of choices. Some are big, some are small, but it's never too late to approach them with intention and positivity. And thank you once again, Richard, for coming into my podcast. I hope this conversation inspires all our listeners. For their moving forward challenges, they can see them as opportunity when they make the next choice.
Thanks for tuning in the Unshakable Growth. Stay unshakable, and I'll catch you in the next episode.